You're watching N.I.C.E Behind the Scenes, a space for conversation about community, collaboration, and the future of journalism. What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of N.I.C.E Behind the Scenes. I'm Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, WHYY's managing editor for community and engagement, here with Eric Marsh Sr., WHYY's community outreach organizer, and Saj Blackwell, founder of PQ Radio 1 and a proud member of WHYY's News and Information Community Exchange. What's going on, guys?
Hey.
Hey.
Hey,
so Sajs, I want to start with what, like, the current day, where we are today, go back a little bit to learn about, your beginnings and community media, and then we'll advance into the future of journalism. And like I said before, this is a conversation, and we want to expose our audience a little bit more to who you are than what they see on the internet and sometimes on our platforms. So most recently, you landed a pretty rare interview with Terrence of No Gun Zone. You partnered with Kimberly Painter in the WHYY newsroom to tell this story. It performed really well for us online and on Google. It was the #2 story. Take us through the process. How the hell did you land that interview? Because everybody I told about it was like, yo, Terrence doesn't do the camera. He doesn't talk to anybody. So how'd you get the interview? How'd you prepare?
Absolutely. Well, this is definitely the first time that he's been caught on camera, with a full-fledged interview focused around him. So he's actually very excited to do it, mainly because we're friends, and here being in community and talking to people and going to the same daycares and the same banks, being involved in the community really does matter. Who your neighbors are, who your kids' parents are, because that's really our relationship. We have our children play together, and that's how we built a friendship and alliances through the community. You were my people. Like, Terrence, and he beyond that, he respects what I do in the community. He respects me being a news source in West Philadelphia, as he is a news source for Philadelphia.
How'd you prepare for it?
So I did a lot of talking to my managing editors and my at WHYY when I brought the idea, because I really felt also just from the very beginning that this was a story that belongs on my platform and belongs on a bigger platform as well. And that's where the beauty of this WHYY partnership comes in. It's like, hey, I have my platform, and I also have this, nationwide platform that I know would probably be truly interested in this grassroots story. So I'm prepping. I first had to kind of counsel Terrence from No Gun Zone to let him know like how beneficial it could be and why it is important for him to speak out and kind of come behind the cloak. And then secondly, I prepared by, again, talking to my partners at WHYY, you, yourself, Eric, and really empowering me to say, hey, you got this. And this is how you might best approach to take to this interview. So I did that. I went over the questions with some of the ideas of, what we are experiencing as a community, because I am community. I live in West Philadelphia. I'm right off of 52nd Street with everybody else, going through these same horrific moments every day of this new person getting shot. Recently a 1-year-old getting shot. We're very affected by that. So in those moments at that time where someone just shot through a whole barbecue where there was grandmoms, grandpops, kids, all types of ages, and we were randomly shot at, not randomly, but purposely shot at during a barbecue. I really felt like, hey, this is the time. We need to have your voice heard. And that was the preparation.
Eric, I want to bring you in, and I know you have some questions for Pepper, but I just want to just quickly touch off of what she said. Look, what was the catalyst for Terrence's interview was the fact that we're dealing with an unprecedented homicide crisis in Philadelphia, and so we're looking at ways of telling stories about gun violence and the people who are in that space, profiling them, trying to get, trying to mine for solutions, and trying to connect communities through content, right? And I think he's one of those people who is doing that. And the more people who know about him and know about their platform, maybe they know more about the issue and could get involved. West Philly, though, you're in West Philly too. Purple reps West Philly. I mean, it's different in West Philly right now. And I know you're feeling it. What's your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I've lived all over the city. And I think, my time in West Philadelphia over the past several years has been unlike my experience in any other part of the city. And that's not to say that Philadelphia as a whole isn't experiencing gun violence on this level, but it's definitely hit closer to home being in West Philadelphia, and to know the number of shootings and the proximity and how closely associated they are with different public events like block parties and barbecues. You know, it just seems to be impacting people of all ages. I mean, just recently we had a 1-year-old shot in the arms of their mother while she was standing at the counter of a store. So it absolutely is unprecedented. And it makes me wonder what the rest of the city, and specifically Mayor Kinney, is thinking and feeling when they're out in a different city. When they're from a different community or a different neighborhood that may not be seeing the same levels of gun violence, it's easy to be detached from it. So Purple, I want to hear a little bit more from you about what are you hearing from your community members and from your neighbors about this issue?
Right. So, it's an understatement to say that West Philadelphia is, experiencing difference in the rest of the city of Philadelphia. It's actually the wild, wild west in West Philadelphia. People are getting shot. Babies are getting shot. Teenagers on a regular basis, 14, 15, 16. You haven't even really heard of a 35-year-old getting shot lately. It's all kids. These are our babies. So I definitely support Councilwoman Jamie Gauthier and what she's doing and standing up against the mayor. It's like almost a second time, like a second wind of supporting her, as when Jamal Johnson was out there protesting in the mayor in City Hall, and them kind of coming together and collaborating, and then me, stumbling onto the story and finding a way to bring both their sides to light, and even getting the mayor involved and giving his side. But I am actually, I'm a resident here. I live here. So it's affecting me. The trauma is affecting my children. So I want to see something done too. I want to see something done right now. Like, I don't want to wait till somebody fills out a grant 2 months from now and they get approved, and then they start working their program where this GVI money is going. I want to see something happen right now. So it's even a little bit a peculiar predicament for me, right? Because everyone knows that I support the mayor. I support Mayor Kinney mostly in the way that he's handling his administration. But people don't know that also I do also disagree. We agree to disagree on many issues. And this, in the way that the gun violence epidemic is being handled, is one of them. I personally, even though I feel almost personally responsible for getting the gun violence press conferences going, the briefings going, I helped get that message across to the mayor, how important it was, and that whole movement. Now that he's doing it, I really feel like they are not as productive as I thought they were going to be. Let
me stop you right there, because this is a microcosm of what I think this emergency response is people ask for things because it sounds good or it may feel good, and then when you get it in actuality, you go, that's a little underwhelming. And so, the idea of a weekly or regular press conference, a press briefing, I think, Purple, to your point, and to Jamal's point, it would be a really good idea if something was actually happening that was worthy of talking about. But what these press conferences are is literally a data dump from the police department to say, here's the arrest we've made, here's the throw the shots at Larry Krasner, he's not prosecuting enough. You don't hear from any community groups.
No.
You get the same buzzwords from the managing director's office and the people in there. You don't actually feel like, when you walk away from that, like, oh, I got a grip on what the city is investing in. I got a grip on everything that's happening. And so with this state of emergency, or this emergency response that is being called now,
right,
I have a thought, Eric, that people are asking for this state of emergency or this emergency response, and it hasn't been crystallized and made in any level of specificity. And so what will happen is something will happen. It will be underwhelming because there was no management of expectations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The lack of specificity around this issue. Listen, people don't even know what to call it, right? We can't agree on whether it's a state of emergency, a healthcare emergency, a gun crisis emergency. Like, there's all these different names that's floating around in the public conversation around it because people don't clearly understand what it entails. And I think, and this is something I've mentioned before, I think that's a failing of Mayor Kinney, is that he has a level of understanding of what it's going to involve, but he hasn't educated the public about what he thinks it's going to involve. And so it's going to impact our community in ways that are going to feel detrimental. It's going to involve curfews.
Right.
It's going to involve more police presence. It's going to involve like more restrictions around your civil liberties and the way you move. And I think Mayor Kinney understands that, but he doesn't understand that the general public doesn't know what they're asking for. And so I think there needs to be a level of, again, these briefings that they're having every week could involve this conversation, unlike what it would look like to implement such a thing. But because he's adverse to conversations, he's adverse to press, Purple, I think this is an opportunity for you to push on that relationship and explain to him that, hey, there's a gap in our understanding between what he thinks we're asking for and what maybe the bill or a council member is asking for.
Well, to jump in on that, actually, I have had this conversation with Mayor Kinney. I've had this conversation with Councilman Gautier just as of yesterday after her press conference. So it's both sides, and it's crazy because I'm on both sides. I'm really on both sides. So to actually to play devil's advocate on what you said, is actually the mayor does exactly understand what he feels as though people are asking him for. He doesn't feel like the people understand what they're asking for.
That's what we're saying, yeah.
Right. So it's just like, for me, like I told Councilman Gautier, and I've told her this before, it's nothing new. We shared this conversation yesterday. I feel like even though she's tabled the theory citywide emergency, when you were presenting the citywide emergency, I feel like it was really heavily just asking for money for this, money for that, money for that. Okay, now he turned around and gave you the money. He gave you 155 million, some old, some new, but you got it. Now it's that when you go to him for these type of citywide emergency, you need to be saying, listen, I want a citywide emergency because we need to change the law for the curfew. We want the curfew to be this time, and we want it to be enforced at this time. A citywide emergency, a statewide emergency means that you can now change the laws as you never were able to before because this emergency did not exist. When the emergency does exist, it means that you can change the laws for this moment in time to benefit the crisis.
But
so
what
that's
laws,
what they're not asking for.
What laws do you feel like needs to be changed if we were to implement this?
Yeah, so people might not agree with me. However, I feel like I need to say, we need to retrain our police, period. From the dust cop to the foot patrol, we need to have an inner city de-escalation training. So before we put officers into our pinpoint areas to do some over policing, that they agree that they're going to have this step of training, that step of training, this step of training, ultimately saying that you cannot bring a gun to a knife fight. We need these types of trainings to be instilled to them, to utilize the utensils that you have. Utilize the rubber bullets that you shot down 52nd Street during the riots. Utilize the tasers that you don't use enough to prevent you from killing or lethally attacking, lethally hurting anyone when you do come into our community. Because I believe that we need to have pinpoint policing. We need to have over policing in these areas. When I talk to my neighbors and I go knock on the door, they will tell you, Purple, I want more police. Where's the National Guard? Put them on the corners where these people are, not necessarily to arrest them. Bring in the National Guard so that will bring in the deterrence. We want them here as a deterrence. I'm saying that we want them here as a deterrence, but we want them to be properly trained. So not another year black kid or young black man gets shot because they were doing the wrong thing or not really communicating with the police as they should. So I'm saying change the curfew. Yes.
No, I was going to say, I just think, look, the problem here with Gautier's response and with the mayor's response is both of them lack candor. Both of them are lacking candor. And they don't want to say what is true because they don't want to scare the public. A real emergency response to a crisis like we're seeing is a curfew not at 9, it's at 6. Right? It's quarantining the neighborhoods, that the 16 zip codes that you've identified that are at the highest rate of gun violence, you quarantine them. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out. You go to the grocery store by 6 o'clock, you need to be in your house because police and National Guard are going to be patrolling through. And if you get caught up in that dragnet, you in for 24, 48 hours until you can see a judge, right? There are going to be casualties, right? Because you can't tell the police to go into a war zone with an emergency response, but hey, use your taser first and interact with people with kid gloves. And so those are the things that we have to be honest about. There's going to be casualties. People's civil liberties are going to get trampled on. The small group of troublemakers born in 2003 and 2004 that's holding these neighborhoods hostage are going to create a really unpleasant situation for everyone who lives there. And the one thing, and I see, Eric, you want to jump in, the one thing that's missing from Gauthier's proposal, which I agree with you 100% on, Purple, is it all centered on emergency funding for anti-gun violence groups. It talked nothing about prosecution. It talked nothing about making sure that the judges are not allowing for plea deals and that we're holding tough. And it talked nothing about the police department and our abysmal clearance rate. How do we keep having this conversation about a gun violence crisis and ignoring the fact that the police aren't solving the crimes?
Right. I'm wondering at what point in our conversation do we talk about community and individual responsibility, right?
Yeah.
We talk about this issue of gun violence as though it's like a plague that has just suddenly floated in on the air, and that these aren't our own neighbors and children that are committing these acts. Purple, you talked about the age of the shooters and the victims being, oftentimes, many times in their teens at this point, right? But at what point in time do we talk about communal efforts, communal responsibility? Where are the people? The incident that happened a few weeks ago where the store owner was shot and killed, having a barbecue, a cookout in broad daylight. Why aren't there any people who have come forward, have witnessed these shooters? How is it that this is possible that nobody has been able to identify a shooter in broad daylight where there's dozens, nearly 100 people were present and almost 100 bullets fired? Where is the communal aspect of this? Where do we as residents take some sense of responsibility in this?
Well, I will jump in and say the problem is that one, people are scared. You're right. They do have these neighborhoods held hostage. It's because they have these all these different organizations that will actually move you if you are part of a crime or if you think you're going to be a victim again. They'll move your family. They'll put you up in a house or something like that. But you don't have enough housing for enough people who would snitch and then feel like their life is in danger. In the hood, you're scared, but also in the hood, people are actually open to having their civil liberties violated to get rid of this constant killing and maiming of our babies. So it's two-sided. One, they're scared. My neighbors are scared. Yes, they may know who is doing it. There's the chick's baby dad is one of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're sleeping with the shooters. You're either sleeping with a shooter, a shooter, or a victim. We're all equally traumatized by this in so many ways. So one, back to Gauthier and back to Sister Gauthier that.
So hold on, before you move on, Purple, because you just said something really key that I think a lot of people don't want to talk about. Clearly, we're getting real here. First of all, Eric, that's a conversation I have all the time. Jawan, I know you know Jawan. He and I talk about, are we expecting the government to do too much? Are we putting too much in the government hands with this? And I'm with you. I don't know how to balance that, where we go from we jump right to the National Guard in emergency and not like, to the baby moms out there, your baby father is a shooter. He hiding the cash and the drugs under your bed. Your son is a shooter. He paying your phone bill with blah, 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 blah. But do I want to risk turning my own son in and then having to pay my own bills? Or do I want to hide my son and his friends in my basement until things cool off and the neighborhood's not hot? And then that same parent out there talking about free blah, 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 right? Let blah, blah, blah out of jail and supporting a state of emergency when they're not doing everything that we can. And so I do think that the amount of pressure we put on Kinney, the amount of pressure we put on Krasner, the amount of pressure we put on Outlaw and the council people, we have to put on ourselves and our neighbors.
And that's exactly why me and my husband along with our neighborhood, we're starting a town watch because we need to do something on the ground, us as neighbors, and many of us feel the same way. It's time to do something, not just to talk about it. So we are encouraging our neighbors from our public platform to start town watches in your own neighborhood. Be solutionary. If you're too scared to go out there and be part of the town watch, volunteer a Black man in your neighborhood or a man in your neighborhood to stand up and try to do something to get, the police and district involved so they can assist in the town watch. So you don't have to feel, you don't have to be confrontational in town watch. You can just do what it says, you're gonna watch, you know what I'm saying? But when you see something, say something. You know
so Eric, what would you say to the people Purple's talking about who say, you're like, are we holding people accountable? Are we telling and providing the police with information? Because that's what Mayor Kenney said in his recent press conference. He's like, look, we're not even getting help from the community. No one's identifying the people. The people who shot out the Alany train station still haven't been found. I mean, that's unacceptable. But what would you say to those people who say, yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm afraid. And with all this funding that you guys are talking about bringing into the city, no one's talking about funding for relocating people who provide information to the police, right? You want me to provide information to the police and stay on my same block? So, I mean, what's the message to them?
I mean, the message is, it's easy to make an anonymous phone call. What would you rather be, afraid or dead? Right? Because the reality is that the bullet doesn't have any names on it, right? And so if you're living in an environment where bullets are flying randomly, bullets are flying carelessly, people are shooting, as Purple said, this is a wild, wild west out there. You're okay with living in a community like this perpetually, as opposed to actually opening your mouth and doing the bare minimum of saying something. And don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying that everyone can be implicated and everyone should just be out here, brave and speaking up. I know it's difficult. I know it's hard. But the reality is that we see what happens when people don't speak up. It only gets worse. It only gets worse. And I will say this. I want to say this, because I'm a firm believer that a lot of these people out here are doing the shooting. I'm willing to bet the majority of them are young men, are often doing so because they have created this subculture where they have been left out. They feel disenfranchised. They don't have any elders that are speaking to them and that are speaking life into them and that are caring for them, right? So I'm not saying to just randomly, go out here and start pointing fingers at people. We have to do multiple things. This is going to take a multifaceted approach. We're going to have to approach young people at a younger and younger age and make sure we wrap our arms around them and that so that they don't fall into the wrong groups. And so that they don't think that this way of behavior is acceptable. And this is how you solve problems. But then we also have to call on our elected officials and police and expect them to be harsher in terms of penalizing these people that behave like this, right? The reality is that we're in the midst of criminal justice reform and Black Lives Matter. This entire past several years that we've been focused on that. But I also think that the pendulum can swing too far in the other direction and that we become too lenient. And so we've got to learn from the mistakes of the past, right? We've got to do away with the 3 strike laws and things where we're over incarcerating people, but we still have to hold our community members and our relatives and neighbors and our sons accountable for the behavior that they exhibit. And it starts with rebuilding that community. So like Purple said, town watch. Town watch is the simplest thing. Like, you can band together with other like-minded people and just keep an eye out on what's happening in your community. Provide more information to the police when they do show up. If you're worried about being pointed out as being a witness, there are ways that you can mitigate that. But to say nothing is to advocate in a way for the amount of violence and death that we've seen happening in the city. And it's unacceptable. We can't continue. We can't hide behind fear any longer.
This reminds me, and I know Eric and Purple, you guys remember this probably way more than I do, but the '94 crime bill, where crime was just so out of control that Black communities, including the Congressional Black Caucus, said, just do something, right? Exactly what we're having now. We just need an emergency response. We need you to do something. Please just draft something. Do what's necessary. And they did, right? And some of the stuff in the crime bill was great, But now we look 20, 25 years back and we go, what the hell were we thinking? Yeah. You know, we just exploded mass incarceration. It was the catalyst before private prisons. We tore communities apart. And that's why I say we have to look at the past first and go, we need to understand bullet point by bullet point what this will include and what it won't include, and get everybody together on this and say, yes, we're comfortable with this, but we can't do it in a vacuum. We have to do it with the past as context.
And I think one of the biggest issues, we don't look at it systemically. To your point, Chris, we have to look at all the factors at play here. And as much as I respect Councilmember Gautier and her push for this idea of this state of emergency, you're right. There's not enough detail for us to feel comfortable. And I think you need to bring all the parties that are involved to the table, including people that work directly with young teenagers, because they're often left out of the conversation.
And teenagers themselves.
And teenagers themselves, they have to be at the table to talk about what's happening. And so if we're able to do that, and we're able to be patient and take the time to pick apart, because again, we're working on our second year of record homicides. So for anybody that says we don't have the time or the patience to sit down at the table and talk, we've been going through this for a long enough time that had we started just a few months ago, we would be in a very different situation now. So come to the table, bring all the folks, and look at the history of these policies that you're asking for, and understand how it's going to impact us both short term and long term.
Let's talk about the media. How do you feel that the media is covering this crisis? We just kind of spent some time talking about how the politicians are handling it. What grade would you give the media writ large? Purple?
Yeah, I would definitely. As far as coverage, no, they are definitely covering the violence. But that's what traditional media does. They cover all of the bad, all of the time. And so we're saturated now, whether you want to be or not, with gun violence and the horrific part of it. You know, the media is I think that they are also taking advantage of, again, exploiting our community because, you know, we're the ones who have the gun violence, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like,
how are they exploiting us? How are they exploiting it?
Because I just feel like, or maybe just because I feel like terrestrial media always exploits the Black community's problems. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel. And I feel like again, personally, if Mayor Kenny, the white mayor, was to send in the white troops into the Black community, the terrestrial media would definitely exploit that as an racial issue. They would make it into a racial issue.
But how do you separate those two things? I mean, even you in your conversation and your description are saying the white mayor and the white cops, right? Yeah. So we're all, it appears that everyone is guilty of this racialization of the issue. How do you prevent that from happening?
Exactly what Chris said. And I actually, the first person who said this is Councilman Kenyatta Johnson. He said that, guess what? We will get behind the mayor. We will get in front of the mayor, you know, to be the face of such a request. That is we need more than half of city council is Black. You know, we need them to stand up and be the ones requesting this. And for me, I'm my naivete, where I feel like city council should be telling the mayor exactly what to do. This is what we want. This is what we want you to do it. Just like for the GVI bill and the money. This is what we want. We want 155 million, do it. They get together, the Black city council, the Black clergy, and all these places. It has to be that we, Black people, are the ones in front of making this change. Because otherwise it's going to blow up in Mayor Kenny's face, or any white mayor sending down, cracking the whip on what needs to happen. Not want to say cracking the whip, with all of our history. but you know what I'm saying? I'm saying that.
But I think it's going to be a very small group of people who will say the white mayor sent in the white troops unrequested. It would be almost as if he just did it unilaterally with no pretext and with no suggestion. He's basically being lobbied and pressured by an array of groups, from 100 Black men in Philadelphia to city council, to say, do something. And so if he brings in the troops, which are not unilaterally white, there are Black members of the National Guard, there are Hispanic members of the National Guard. We saw them when they were here during the George Floyd uprising. So for one, it would be inaccurate if the media portrayed it as the white mayor sending in the white troops. It's really the mayor, under pressure by the Black community, sending in the National Guard, who happened to be an array of racists. So not racist, an array of racists.
But that is the narrative. That's what needs to be pushed. And that's why I think we have to empower our city council to, you know, again, Sister Gautier, get that bill very specific, you know, get your resolution or your solution to this crime violence very specific. You got the money. Now what? You know, let's be very specific on what needs to be done. Curfew 6 o'clock, you know, cops here, cops there, wherever. Let's be very, very specific on what we want. Let's all sit down and then be the catalyst, you know, and empower the mayor to do it, you know, without, not that I want to put out to say like he's scared or this is anything he told me personally, you know, I'm just, you know, putting it together this way to think about it on these different angles as well, maybe what maybe some of the hesitation is.
I want to add something to kind of help counteract or counterbalance this conversation, right? Because as much as we talk about the media is racializing the conversation, we have racialized the conversation and how we're talking about this. But the reality is that white Philadelphians have not been quiet on this subject by any means. We've seen articles by Stephen Starr and many other folks and op-eds and commentaries by white Philadelphians who also recognize that gun violence is a crisis and they want it addressed. And so I think if we're talking about how the media covers this, we really need to look at the fact that all of Philadelphia is seeing and feeling this pressure and they want something to change. Now, communities may want it for a different reason. There may be a different approach depending on what communities you're talking to. You know, oftentimes we have this conversation when we talk about Philadelphia is suffering from a gun violence crisis. Well, if you go up in the far Northeast, that's Philadelphia. Are they suffering from a gun violence crisis?
They're right. Suffering from opioids.
Well, even like that's even the lower Northeast is suffering from everybody. Every part of the city is impacted differently by this issue. But the reality is that if media covered the issue of gun violence more comprehensively and less divisively, and actually made a point to include perspectives from various people of color, different backgrounds, different socioeconomic strata, they would understand that everybody is pretty much on board with that this is a horrible situation to be in. So there's not even a reason for it to be as divided along racial lines as it is. However, saying that and recognizing the fact that we do know for a fact that the majority of the perpetrators and the victims are young Black men. We do know that. That's a fact. But that then begs the question as to why. And so I would love if the media could start getting into why, right? I don't want to see any more stories about an unknown 20-something-year-old was shot X number of times by an unknown assailant. No arrests were made. Like that is almost verbatim way so many of the stories are being told. And I think we've had a little bit of a change, but through the work that Jim McMillan is doing with the Institute for Better Gun Violence Reporting, we've had some changes over the past few years with reporters looking more at the impact and victims and survivors of gun violence. But at the same time, we're not really digging down into the root cause. And I think another thing that I would add, going back to city government and elected officials, is that we need to start doing more studies and research into the underlying causes before we can say we can come up with a cure or some way to fix it. And so this idea of how we're spending this money, and I think if the media was to change its perspective and start asking more questions, then the city would get behind that and start recognizing that we don't have the answers. Everybody wants an answer and wants to solve this problem, but we don't even know what the real underlying problem is. And so we have to start looking at it holistically like that. And the media, I think, is perfectly positioned to start doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the media is just covering this like a horse race, right? Like you said, it's just tallying. You know, dead Black kid in South Philly dead this week, 2 dead Friday. You know, when you turn on Fox 29 News, for example, on a Monday morning, deadly weekend in Philadelphia on Friday night, 4 kids, Sex and the City, Saturday night, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, it's just keeping a tally. No real answers on who these people were, who their families are, how it's impacted the neighborhood, how the neighborhood is responding. We've learned and heard more about, in particular, that there's 14 to 16 neighborhoods in which this gun violence is really concentrated. King Sesson being one of them. How much of the media is done an investigation into what is missing in those neighborhoods? What do those neighborhoods have in common? How many of these neighborhoods are food deserts? How many of these neighborhoods have people living in abject poverty? How well performing are these schools in these neighborhoods? What's the transportation like in these neighborhoods? What's the average median income in these neighborhoods? And try to establish a baseline set of patterns and data from which to work from. The media is complicit in the fact that there are no solutions, real solutions, because they have not been advocating for solutions. They have just been telling the story and telling it incorrectly. Let's actually talk about N.I.C.E and what's N.I.C.E been like for you. What was it like when you got asked? How you feel like your life and your work has changed, and what you're looking forward to in the future.
N.I.C.E has just been super impactful to my life. I mean, one thing, I think we're all human beings, so we all come from a human space. So when someone acknowledges your work, it feels good. It feels good. It lets you know that you're on the right track. And even if you're the most arrogant person in the world, it always feels good to have an acknowledgement for what you're doing. So when N.I.C.E reached out to me, I was very, first of all, I was like, is this real? You know, is this real? Because it came in social media. I'm like, wow, is this real? What's going on here? You know, so, but to get the invitation and then to really understand what N.I.C.E was all about. And my experience actually started literally a year ago now in the N.I.C.E family. And just the fact that N.I.C.E was willing to partner with me, that's a lot. That's a big deal. That's different than becoming an employee, right? Because you're an employee, then they boss you around, they give you a check and they tell you what to do, right? But a partnership means that they value your opinion on a same platform. They value your work on the same platform, and that they're open to helping you grow. It's like somebody wants to help me grow. They don't want to be my competition. Like, you know, that's really unheard of in today's society, right? We're all trying to, you know, dog eat dog world. We're trying to get to the best, to be the best, number one. So I was super, super honored when N.I.C.E reached out, because I just was like, wow, you know, the fact that, you know, a little Black girl from West Philly, you know, Chester first and then West Philly, you know, gets an opportunity to glow up with a major platform was just mind blowing for me, just exciting, and an exciting part. So, you know, in the trench of going through N.I.C.E, you really have to look at it from a professional standpoint on can this actually benefit me? And then how can I continue bringing something to the table without assimilating, right? So that's also been an interesting challenge for me as my goals and dreams. You know, my little Black girl goals and dreams was always to see myself on the TV talking about, welcome to, you know, I've always wanted to be that one. Being a journalist, being an anchor on TV was always one of the things that I wanted to do. And being a chiropractor, you know, and being president of the United States. But, you know, that was one of the things that I rightly aligned that I wanted to do. And so to get an opportunity to do something close to it and to be supportive is groundbreaking. And that's why I feel like a lot of terrestrial news stations are copying, you know, because it's such a great idea.
Purple, what are some of the impacts that you've seen as a result of being part of N.I.C.E? What are the results that you've experienced over the past 6 months that you've been a N.I.C.E partner?
I mean, last week.
Hold on.
Oh,
yeah, your internet was going out again. Try it again.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I have to say, right now, I'm experiencing an impact right now, currently, to be, again, an independent news media, independent community news from West Philadelphia, an online internet radio station, to be number 2 on Google for producing real news is just like, what? Like, oh my goodness, it's very, very big for me. And the fact that you guys, you know, I was able to do it, you know, as my original self, and I didn't have to change the color of my hair. You know, I didn't have to change my purple eyes. I was able to just be me and give voice. someone who mainstream media would love to talk to, that they really couldn't get a hands on, that I was able to produce that, was really, again, groundbreaking. It's for independent news source to be #2 for Google News, and to be right next to the Inquirer, and right next to, all these different, important news sources that I grew up watching and reading, to be right there with them is life-changing. It's life-changing. If nothing else, it's life-changing.
What are some of the things that you hope to get out of N.I.C.E moving forward? What are the things you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to collaborating with the other partners, and really figuring out how best to collaborate so that it is beneficial to everyone. I want to actually help the program be successful by actually, enacting some of the principles, and be excited about where the future could go, as far as making my own news station. I don't know, what I'm saying, or featuring or putting other people onto this platform to be a blessing to others, how I feel like I have been blessed. Since working with N.I.C.E, I've actually restructured my radio station to be exactly what I want it to be. I used to feel like, coming from a hip hop and music world, I really had to keep up with the Joneses, but I no longer feel like I have to keep up with any Jones, in regards to my business and my radio station. I'm putting together just exactly how I want it to be, giving a voice to other community people and base, as opposed to finding the hottest rapper to have a show. You know what I'm saying? So my whole concept of what I want to do is really empower me to be strong in my decision making on building the station the way I want it, as opposed to what I think the industry wants.
Tell our audience, and that's a wonderful answer. I'm really just so happy that you're happy. That makes me happy. And to wrap up, tell our audience where PQ Radio 1 came from. Why? What was the motivation to do it? What was the motivation to keep it going? And, what could people expect from you in 5 years?
Well, that's a real question. And I always say, where PQ Radio 1 came from. So my origins in radio came from my business entertainment. I was a manager in the rap game and in music for a long time. All of my artists are Grammy nominated, all the way down to my husband, Blackwell, who was a Grammy nominated singer, to being part of the team that broke Meek Mills with Batcave Radio back at WKDU 91.7 FM. So these were my foundations, always being in music and entertainment. And then learning how, I felt like, I'm in music and entertainment. I'm Purple Queen. I should be able to be on the radio and do things like that. But I used to knock on the door and nobody was answering over there. People at Power 99, 100.3 The Beat, places like that. I really felt like I should be there. I could fit in. But, I wasn't what they were looking for, And after so many no's, it's like, wait a minute. They're telling me no, but I know in my heart that it's a yes. I know that I can do radio. I know because I prep my artists to get on the radio. You know what I'm saying? I do the media training so they can be ready for radio. So when I realized that I was knocking on the door and no one was letting us in, I decided to do my own. And to internet at the time was, monumental to making change on every level for every situation. Internet was a very powerful tool. So when I realized that I can actually have my own station and be just like a terrestrial radio station, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do for self. I'm going to do it myself. And so I birthed, along with my husband, PQRadio1.com, which stands for Progressive Quality Radio, although a lot of people think it stands for Purple Queen Radio.
That's what I thought it stood for.
It stands for Progressive Quality because I knew that, I had a progressive mind. I'm not opposed to change, and that I could change the radio game forever by doing my own and doing it the way I wanted to do it. So that's where PQRadio1.com came from. We came from just used to booking sessions in a studio to produce our content, to moving into a studio, to moving into our own very space now at 3500 Lancaster Avenue, which is a community education center, a historic building for art and making change in the dance world and art world. And I brought a radio station there. And since then have been a voice for West Philadelphia and of course the whole world, as some of our major fans come from the Netherlands. So, it's just about people. When people tell me I can't, then that unfortunately is a lot of motivation to make it to an I can.
My last question, and I'll let Eric take us home. Where did the purple thing come from? Like, I mean, what's the deal with purple? I remember coming to interview you at your house. Your house is painted purple.
My house is purple. I love it. I love it. One thing I will let people know is that I feel like I did not make the decision to begin to be obsessive with purple. I truly believe that sometimes in a weird world, like purple called me. It just began to call my spirit and to call me as a young person. And like when I was 12 years old was the first time that I really felt like I had my own money, because I started my own I had a job. I got into a hair store, a hair salon, and I was a wash girl. And I was actually responsible for purchasing my own things. And I used to see purple all the time. I always lingered on purple. Like it always called me. I started noticing it more and more. And as I became older and being able to purchase my own things, I would just always gravitate to purple. But then as I got even more older, I started to do the research, like what is purple all about? Or why am I so attracted to it? And I started realizing that the principles of purple, the spirituality, the knowledge of self, the royalness, and it all came. I used to wear suits in high school, suits and heels in high school. In 7th grade, I was president. I became president of the SAD, Students Against Drugs, president in a predominantly white school. So my spirit has always been one of leadership and one of making and doing things different. And purple is that calming sensation. When you wear purple and wrap yourself around purple, you actually vibrate on a higher level. And it's been proven. And that's why back in the day and in Roman times, purple was royalty, and you only got to wear purple if you were royal. And understanding who I am and realizing my ancestry and that I am a queen and that my ancestors come from Morocco and I've always been of royalty, it just fit. And the synergy became Purple Queen. And she used to be a performing artist back in the day too. So
I love how you go in and out of talking about yourself in third person.
Yeah.
Eric, last conversation piece, last question.
Let me think. Because as you were talking so much about the color, the purple, it made me think about Alice Walker's book, The Color Purple, and what she says about the color purple in the book, right? Yeah. And about what it does to you on a spiritual level. So I love the fact that, that it does resonate with you. And because it resonates with you so well, you resonate with other people that you encounter. So your personality is just really radiant. And I really enjoy your participation in N.I.C.E and just watching you grow as a creator. Now, having said that, I want to know from you, what is your relationship with the community? Like, what is it about you that drives you for and to represent West Philadelphia the way that you do? Why do you do what you do?
Mm-hmm. I come from a mother and father who, at any time you can come home and there's a new person living with us, or anytime you come home and there's a platter of food outside for people just to come and get. I come from a parental standpoint of Khadija and Sahib, who put in the importance of prayer and God and being of community and helping the poor. Like, these are some of the principles that I was raised on. Having a foundation of Islam, it's your responsibility to take care of the poor and your community. So it is innate. It was, instilled in me at a very young age, and I'm happy that it was, because it's that cliche, injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. And if I know about it, I'm totally affected. I become consumed with helping or the problem and trying to find a solution, or, just being a voice or being, one of the reasons why people believe that, Mayor Kenny can open up to me and talk to me where he hates the press now, is because I treat you with respect, the same respect that I want to receive. And I want to listen to you. And I'm going to hear you, and then I'm going to try to help you, even the mayor. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter who you are. My spirit is going to be open to just trying to help you in any way I can. Never everything is a fairy tale story. It doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes you end up trying to help somebody and they become your enemy. I don't know how that happens, but that's just the reality of life. But again, I just believe that the peace, my inner peace, and my relationship with God allows me to be loving, love over hate, love trumps hate. And that's why I'm able to push that message out and to be a resource. And I think that people just feel that love. The funny thing about me wearing purple is that some people never really even paid attention to purple, right? But when they meet me, after they leave me, it never fails. I'll get a follow-up call sometime in life that says, I seen this purple something the other day and I thought about you. And I just start laughing or smiling. Like it's always a positive, reoccurrence of the thought of myself and purple and what I'm trying to do. So my reputation is my word and my bond. Although I'm very stern and serious, people feel the love and I genuinely give the love.
For other creators around the city who are creating news and information content for their communities, what would you tell them about N.I.C.E, and what things would you say to attract them if they were interested in becoming a partner?
Yeah. I would say to other content creators something that I always say, like if you ever had a vision and a dream to do this, as before you had to go to college, I mean, you should still do these things to go to college for journalism and things like that. But before you had to have had taken the hard steps in life to get where you wanted to go, to be acknowledged as any type of news content, you had to go through the proper steps, college, all this kind of stuff to be able to be respected as a news source. In today's society, I would encourage you to be exactly who you want to be. If you are passionate about being a content creator and doing what you do it. Do it with be passionate about your vision and your dream, actually do it, be consistent, and then be excited that there's a program like N.I.C.E that might actually want to partner with you and lift you up and lift your platform up and show you that, yes, you can. Although you don't have on the suit and you're not at the anchor's desk and you don't have the nice shave, there still might be an opportunity for you to grow and to be exactly who you want to be through N.I.C.E.
Thank you, Purple. And so glad that you are a part of N.I.C.E and that you're working with Eric and I, and we're definitely looking forward to the future. For Eric Marsh, Saj Blackwell, I'm Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris. Thank you so much for watching N.I.C.E Behind the Scenes, and we'll see you soon.